K-pop. K-pop as a modern industry was built deliberately. In the early 1990s, South Korea's government decided that cultural exports, music, film, television, could serve as soft power and began funding the infrastructure to produce them. Entertainment companies, SM Entertainment was the first major one, developed a training system where young performers spent years learning singing, dancing, and languages before ever appearing in public. The music that came out of that system was polished to a degree most pop industries don't attempt. Most genres grow from the bottom up. K-pop was engineered from the top down, and it worked better than anyone outside South Korea expected. That gap between how it was made and how far it traveled is what makes it worth paying attention to. K-pop draws from American and Japanese pop structures, hip-hop production, electronic music, and R&B vocal styles, filtered through Korean musical sensibilities and an obsessive attention to visual presentation. Lyrically, it covers love and youth, though the songwriting is often handled by professional writers rather than the performers themselves. Its original audience was South Korean teenagers. By the 2010s, it had built one of the most organized fan cultures in music history, with dedicated global communities running translation accounts, streaming parties, and coordinated chart campaigns. Live performance is the central product in K-pop. The choreography is as important as the music, sometimes more so. Vocals are layered and polished in production. Synthesizers, drum machines, and electronic production dominate sonically. The idol group format, multiple performers with distinct visual identities and assigned roles, is the genre's defining structural unit rather than any particular instrument. Seo Taiji and boys are widely credited with starting Korean pop's modern era in 1992 by mixing American hip-hop and rock with Korean-language pop. HOT and SEs were the first major idol groups of the 1990s. BoA broke into the Japanese market in the early 2000s and opened the path for Korean artists internationally. Big Bang and Toonie pushed the genre's production quality in the late 2000s. BTS sold out stadiums in cities where almost nobody speaks Korean and became the first Korean act to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Blackpink became the most subscribed music act on YouTube. The genre's structure has produced dozens of successful acts across multiple generations, which is itself unusual. Most pop movements burn through one generation. K-pop has built systems that keep producing new ones. Afrobeats. Afrobeats developed in Nigeria and Ghana in the early 2000s, built by a generation of producers and artists who had grown up with American hip-hop and R&B but wanted to make something that sounded like where they were from. Lagos was the center. The city had a large young population, widespread access to digital music production tools, and a music industry that was largely outside the formal structures of the Western market. That combination produced something new quickly. A decade ago, most people outside West Africa had never heard of it. Now it's in car commercials, NBA arenas, and the top 10 of streaming charts in countries where nobody speaks Yoruba or Pidgin. That kind of growth doesn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen because Western gatekeepers decided to let it in. It happened because the music reached listeners directly. Afrobeats draws from West African highlife and juju traditions, Jamaican dancehall, American hip-hop, and R&B, and in its more recent productions, electronic music. Lyrically, it deals with love, celebration, success, and African identity, though subject matter varies widely by artist. Its original audience was urban West African youth, particularly in Lagos and Accra. The genre's global spread has been driven by diaspora communities in the UK, US, and Europe, and then by streaming algorithms that picked up the engagement patterns. Percussion is the foundation, with African drumming traditions giving Afrobeats rhythms that sound different from Western pop even when the production is otherwise familiar. The guitar, particularly the electric guitar played in highlife-influenced patterns, carries a lot of the melody. Synthesizers and digital production are central in modern Afrobeats. The Afrobeat pattern, a specific rhythmic structure that splits the beat differently from most Western music, is the genre's defining sonic signature. Fela Kuti is the historical ancestor, though his Afrobeat was a different genre, politically charged and built around jazz and funk. Modern Afrobeats came later and is a separate thing. Wizkid's 2016 collaboration with Drake on One Dance brought the genre to mainstream Western attention. Burna Boy's 2020 album Twice as Tall won the Grammy for Best Global Music Album. Davido, Tiwa Savage, and Tems each built substantial international audiences. Afrobeats is now influencing pop production globally in the way that Jamaican reggae influenced pop in the 1970s and 80s. Lofi hip-hop. Lofi hip-hop coalesced as a genre in the early 2010s, though its roots go back further. The sound comes from a specific production aesthetic: deliberately degraded audio quality, vinyl crackle, muffled bass, slightly off-tune samples, slow tempos, and jazz or soul samples looped underneath minimal hip-hop beats. The goal was music that sounded like a memory of something rather than a new recording. That quality turned out to have a very specific use case. The sound was always there in certain corners of hip-hop. J Dilla's production in the late 1990s and early 2000s used similar textures. Nujabes, a Japanese producer, built a catalog in the 2000s that became foundational to what Lofi became. What changed in the 2010s was distribution. YouTube and SoundCloud let producers reach listeners directly, and one format, the continuous live stream, turned Lofi into a listening environment rather than individual tracks. Lofi draws from jazz harmonics, soul samples, and hip-hop beat structures. Lyrically, it often has no lyrics at all, which is unusual for a hip-hop adjacent genre, and is also exactly why it works as background music. Its audience is people who need something to listen to while studying, working, or sleeping. That is a large and consistent audience. The genre became one of the most streamed categories on YouTube through pure utility. Production is the instrument in Lofi. Samples, most often from jazz and soul records, are pitched down, filtered, and looped. Drum programming is loose and slightly off-rid, mimicking the imprecision of live drumming. Bass is low and warm. The vinyl crackle effect is often added artificially. Live instruments, piano, guitar, occasionally appear but are processed to sound old. Chilled Cow, later renamed Lofi Girl, launched a YouTube channel in 2017 built entirely around a single animated loop of a girl studying at a desk, with Lofi beats playing underneath. The stream ran continuously and accumulated billions of plays. That single channel did more to define and distribute the genre than any individual artist. Nujabes remains the most cited influence among Lofi producers. Joji, before his transition to solo pop work, released early music in the Lofi space. The genre has no stars in the traditional sense. Most of its producers are anonymous or known only by usernames, which fits the music's ethos of being atmospheric rather than autobiographical. Phonk started in the late 2010s on SoundCloud, built by producers, mostly anonymous, mostly based in Russia and Eastern Europe, who were sampling Memphis rap from the early 1990s. Memphis rap was itself a regional underground genre, dark, slow, and deliberately lofi, recorded in basements in Tennessee by artists like DJ Screw, 3 6 Mafia in their early years, and Skinny Pimp. It had never had a wide audience. Phonk producers found it decades later on the internet, stripped out the vocals, slowed it down further, added distorted 808 bass lines, and built something new from the remains. The genre existed almost entirely underground until TikTok. Then, in 2020 and 2021, Phonk became the default soundtrack for car videos, gym edits, and anything designed to feel aggressive and fast. The heavy distorted 808, the dark key samples, the high-energy tempo, all of it worked in the context of short video clips in a way nobody had planned. Streaming numbers grew by over 1,000% in 2 years. The artists making it were still largely anonymous. No label had signed the genre. No industry decision had been made. It happened anyway. Phonk draws from Memphis rap sonically and structurally, with trap production techniques added in later iterations. Lyrically, most Phonk has minimal vocals, often just chopped samples or short repeated phrases. The mood is intentionally aggressive, dark, and high energy. Its original audience was producers and listeners in Russian and Eastern European internet communities. Its current audience is global and heavily male, skewing toward the 16 to 25 demographic. The 808 bass, distorted and heavy, is the genre's defining element. Dark minor key piano or synth samples carry the melody. The hi-hat patterns are rapid and mechanical, Vocal chops, short fragments of sampled vocals processed heavily, appear throughout. The production aesthetic values distortion and heaviness over clarity. Unlike most genres, funk is almost entirely producer-driven. Live performance barely exists. There are no household names in funk the way there are in most genres. Chordshell's Murder in My Mind became one of the most streamed funk tracks, reaching audiences who had no idea what the genre was called. Ghost Domain moved through funk as one of several genres before transitioning to metal-influenced work. Sudira, Funk Sauce, and Interworld are among the producers most associated with the genre's spread. Funk remains one of the few examples of a sound going from complete obscurity to global streaming numbers without a single traditional industry decision being made about it. These genres didn't come from major labels or marketing budgets. They came from bedrooms, servers, and cities that the music industry wasn't paying attention to. Which one surprised you the most?